Hello and welcome to the News at 7, where we get to the heart of the day, stories and communities across Scotland. Tonight, a mixed reaction to a new post-Brexit deal with the EU. It's been welcomed by some sectors, but the Scottish Fishermen's Federation has described it as disastrous. We'll speak to them live on the programme. Tributes to a 16-year-old boy who died after a stabbing on Irvine Beach at the weekend. We'll hear from a charity that campaigns against knife crime. And the United Nations backs a campaign for improved access to maternity services in Caithness. We'll also have all the sport with Lewis too. What have you got for us tonight?
Well, Laura, we'll hear from a former Dundee captain after the club sacked Tony Docherty as manager the morning after securing their safety in the top flight.
Hi, I'm Laura McKeever. Welcome to the News at 7. Almost 9 years after Britain voted to leave the EU, a new deal setting out post-Brexit relations has been reached. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, set out some of the details, including reduced checks on British food exports to the EU, which should make it easier and cheaper for producers to access European markets. Travellers from the UK will also be able to use more e-gates in Europe, which should reduce queuing time for holidaymakers. In return, the UK's agreed to a 12-year deal giving EU fishing boats access to UK waters. This part of the deal has angered some Scottish fishermen. We'll hear from them in a moment, but first, this is what the UK and Scottish governments had to say about the deal.
This will benefit Scottish businesses, it will benefit Scottish consumers, and it will benefit the economy and give us more jobs. That's surely to be celebrated. And Salmon Scotland have said today that this is an EU breakthrough deal for their members. So in the round, this is very good for the country. It's very good when you set it against India and the US. And don't forget that the naysayers have been saying don't do a deal with India, turn away from the President of the United States, and don't do this deal with the EU. I think you do all three. We can congratulate the Prime Minister for his pragmatic approach in getting them across the line.
We know that for 50 years, the fishing industry has been expendable in the eyes of successive UK governments, and it's deeply unfortunate to see the fishing industry once again used as a pawn, used as leverage to secure a better EU trading relationship.
Well, let's get some more reaction now from the Scottish Fishermen's Federation. Its Chief Executive, Elspeth MacDonald, joins us live from Aberdeen this evening. Elspeth, welcome. Thank you for being with us. What's the industry saying? What are your members thinking?
Well, this is a disastrous deal for our industry to give away essentially 12 years of free access for EU vessels into UK fishing waters, and particularly into Scottish waters, without anything coming back to our industry in exchange for that, is a terrible deal. And I think we all possibly realised that there was likely to be another multi-year settlement on the table. That really wasn't our preference, but to find that that's now a 12-year deal that locks the industry into this dysfunctional relationship with the EU and fisheries for another 12 years is devastating for our industry. But
there's no reduction in catches, is there? What else is it about this that's problematic in your view?
Well, to have access for 12 years to the UK fishing waters, the EU should be giving us fish rather than us giving any fish back. So essentially, the way that any normal coastal state relationship would work is that if you want access to somebody's waters, then you have to give them something in exchange for that, and that should be fishing opportunities. So to have now this deal whereby the EU will continue to have unfettered access to the UK, and the UK does not gain, the Scottish industry does not gain any increase in quota share in exchange for this deal, that's a terrible deal.
What would you like to see then? Is 12 years far too long? Would you have liked to have seen that being negotiated in a much shorter period of time?
Well, what we wanted was what the Brexit deal stated should happen, the same deal that the UK and the EU signed up to in 2020, which was from the middle of next year that we would move to a situation whereby access to each other's waters was negotiated on an annual basis. That's the international norm. That's the way we negotiate with other countries such as Norway and the Faroe Islands. And that's the arrangement that we wanted with the EU, because that would have given us the greatest leverage to get a better deal for Scottish fishermen. So by taking that off the table and essentially rewriting the chapter of the TCA so that we no longer have that opportunity, that's a really bad outcome for our members.
There's not going to be an increase, though, in the EU catch, is that right? This is just about that length of time of access.
Yes, there won't be any increase in the EU catch, but it's really important to remember that in terms of value, the EU catches 7 times more fish in UK waters than the UK fishes in EU waters. So it's a really unbalanced deal. It's really asymmetric. They get a far better deal in fisheries than the UK does, but they don't give us anything in return for it. So that is not a fair trade.
Just briefly, Elspeth, what happens now? Is this it, in your view, or will the industry be pushing to have this renegotiated at some point?
Well, 12 years is a long time. There's a lot can happen in that time. This is only a government that's in place for another few years. But we have to regroup, see what our members wish us to do. But this is a bad deal, and we would contend that with anyone who would say otherwise.
OK, well, we're grateful for your time this evening. Elspeth MacDonald, many thanks for joining us. Tributes have been paid to a kind and caring 16-year-old boy who died after a stabbing on Irvine Beach at the weekend. Caden Moy from East Kilbride was in a disturbance involving a large group of teenagers on Saturday and died in hospital on Sunday. A 17-year-old boy has been arrested over the incident. Meanwhile, in Edinburgh, a 16-year-old has been charged with attempted murder after a teenager was stabbed during a large-scale disturbance on Portobello Beach on Friday. I've been hearing from Tim Frew of the organisation Youth Link Scotland, which runs the No Knives, Better Lives programme. And I asked him what the data was telling us about knife crime in Scotland.
Well, overall, data-wise, it has been a reducing effect over the last many years. There's been some fantastic work going on in and around knife crime. More recently, I think we are seeing, a sort of a rise in incidents that I think we can perceive, but it will take time to understand that more. And I think that would be something that Police Scotland would have a better handle on. But it's certainly something that we've seen in terms of antisocial behaviour, concerns around antisocial behaviour is something that's on the rise.
What impact does it have, especially when it involves very young people, on their families, their schools and their wider communities?
Yeah, it's deeply distressing, clearly, when young people are caught up in incidents like this. And we extend our thoughts to all, families and young people involved in such situations. It's still important to say that, overall, that these are quite rare incidents, but they are really concerning for all involved.
Tell us more about the kind of education that you're involved in. You go into schools. What's the messaging? What do you say to young people?
Sure. So I'm Chief Executive of Youth Link Scotland, which is the National Agency for Youth Work, and we work on the No Knives, Better Lives programme. That's a programme funded by Scottish Government. There are 2 key aspects of that. One is about making sure that all of those involved, not just school teachers, but youth workers, social workers, police, and a number of different health professionals work together to support each other around the best kind of interventions and practices. In terms of children and young people, I think it's very much about working with children and young people to understand what the issues are. We have a couple of toolkits that have been really effective in that. One is called Quit Fighting for Likes, and that is around social media and helping young people understand some of the negative impacts that can come from social media. And also we run a number of training sessions around not being a bystander, not just standing and watching on, but sort of supporting each other to confront situations that are negative and sort of prevent them happening.
And what would your advice to parents be? Maybe parents watching and thinking, is this a conversation I should be having with the young person in my house? How would you advise them to do that?
Absolutely. I think come at these things naturally and have conversations. I think, there's some very serious incidents that have happened in Scotland, really tragic incidents. But it's important that, parents having conversations with young people are reassuring and that they're not overly sensationalizing things. This is a very rare kind of situations that happen, but young people can improve their knowledge and understanding about the importance of not carrying any weapons around. That's hugely important. There's also been an independent report in terms of antisocial behaviour recently that's been given to the Scottish Government. And it talks about the importance of investing in youth work, in safe spaces for young people to come together, and having clear kind of ring-fenced sort of funding for that, because those safe spaces are opportunities for young people to engage in more diversionary, positive activities, rather than getting caught up into sort of negative behaviours.
OK, Tim Frew, we're really grateful for your time today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's get a roundup now of the stories making the BBC News app in Scotland. Scotland has seen the first sustained rise in deaths from heart disease in a generation, according to new analysis by the British Heart Foundation. It's calling for a renewed focus on cardiovascular disease. A small electric passenger ferry is beginning a 3-year trial in Orkney, built by Artemis Technologies. It uses new hydrofoil tech and could cut travel times between islands. A star of the BBC drama Call the Midwife, Laura Main, is appealing for funding to protect the future of Aberdeen Arts Centre, which inspired her to become an actress. And for more on all of these stories, you can scan the QR code. It's there for you on the screen now. It'll take you to the BBC Scotland app, where there is more for you, including the surge in the number of bike tracks opening in the Scottish borders. Now, a campaign group fighting for better maternity services in Caithness has welcomed recommendations by a UN committee on healthcare in rural areas. For the last decade, the Caithness Health Action Team has been calling for the restoration of a consultant-led maternity service in Wick. Andrew Thompson reports.
Back in 2016, the maternity unit at the Caithness General Hospital in Wick was downgraded. There had been safety concerns about the previous consultant-led service, and it was changed to being midwife-led. But that's meant that the vast majority of women from the far north now have to travel here to Raigmore Hospital in Inverness to give birth. Now that's a journey of over 100 miles, not a trip any woman would be keen to make whilst in labour. Last year, the Scottish Human Rights Commission voiced concern about access to maternity services in a report to the Scottish Parliament. The Caithness Health Action Team subsequently raised the issue with the UN Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and they've now also highlighted disparities in services for women in remote areas, saying that they should be strengthened. Campaigners are now hoping this will lead to improvements.
The primary objective is to improve maternity care, but there's also women's health care generally and the health care of so many patients who live in the far north. It's time to move away from centralisation, get back to the way things used to be 10, 20, 30 years ago, where you had access to local, equitable health care within our own communities.
NHS Highlands says it provides as many gynaecology and maternity procedures as possible at the Caithness General Hospital. The Health Board says that it has increased the midwifery team in Wick, although high risk or complex cases continue to be referred to Inverness. The Scottish Government, meanwhile, says it's considering the recommendations of this report carefully and says it's established a national centre for remote and rural healthcare, which aims to reduce inequalities experienced in remote, rural and island communities. Andrew Thompson, reporting Scotland, Inverness.
An investigation by BBC Scotland's found that racist incidents and bullying recorded in schools increased by more than 50% last year. Campaigners and parents say racism and hate crime is a growing problem, but councils and ministers aren't doing enough to tackle the issue. Ekta's daughter Anissa was subjected to racial abuse in school, which forced her to move to a different school.
She kind of changed initially from a very bubbly, very outgoing, very confident young girl to someone who was not wanting to engage in things. You would ask her, do you want to do this, or shall I invite one of your friends over for a play date? And her answer was always, no, I don't want to do that. So she changed, her personality changed, and I could see it. It was very, very evident to me and probably other family members who were around us, because they were saying, what's going on? There's something going on. But like I'm saying, she didn't want to, at that point, didn't want to say anything. When the racism started, she started questioning, why am I being told I'm different? Why am I being told the colour of my skin means people don't want to talk to me? So she started questioning things. But I suppose the good thing was she could point and she could see that it was racism, which is the reason, the specific 2 instances of racism where it had the biggest impact, she was quite comfortable coming to me and saying, this is what's happened at school. And the school haven't done anything about it, which is where I then stepped in to say something needs to be done about it.
That was Ekta there, and her daughter Anissa is now happy in her new school. But let's speak to Kwaku Aji, who advocates for racial equality in schools. Kwaku, welcome. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Laura.
Is this a growing problem, or is recording getting better?
That's the thing, it's kind of hard to say which is which, because previous research that we've conducted has shown that as much as 85% of schools do not record incidences properly or at all. And we know that's still a growing trend, because in the latest research that the BBC conducted and research that we know of ourselves, some schools and council areas actively said that they don't record incidents. So it's important that we get all incidences recorded so that we know what the true picture is. But it is still a growing trend of what we're seeing from different organisations in terms of the rise of hate crime.
Yeah, and from the parents and the children that your organisation supports, where do you think this is coming from?
This is it. It comes from a multitude of things, whether racist behaviour, jokes or any comments are not being challenged at home or challenged on the streets or anywhere, just anywhere that you do see it occurring. Also with the use of social media, the landscape of social media has changed quite a lot. That has had an influence on that. So it's just a different multitude of factors that's played into this.
How can it be tackled? What's the best way to address this, would you say?
I would say holding each other account, make sure that if you do hear of any comments, people making jokes or anything, that we are calling this out, because if you were held to account by our peers, that's the best way around it, and just making sure that doesn't manifest and happen in our schools.
And in your experience, does it help to do that very early on when children are younger to crack down on that kind of behaviour, but just to educate them as well, to help them to understand?
Absolutely, like as early as possible. It's better to use the expression nip it in the bud as early as possible, because once it becomes normalised in terms of the behaviours that we should exhibit out in society, then it just becomes more normalised and everyone would just be happier and further reduce hate crimes that do happen to other groups as well.
In terms of reporting as well, do you feel that this is something that councils are taking seriously enough?
There are councils that are taking it serious. However, there are cases where they're not taking it serious enough, and we need to do it a lot more, because if you're not recording these incidents, how do you know that the incidents are being dealt with in any way? And it's something that we do hear a lot up and down the country.
And how does it affect a young person's education especially, but just their general social development if they're being made to feel like this?
That's the thing, and that's a very key thing that's been often not talked about, is the pupil school experience, because a lot of times I hear from a lot of people that say that they're either thinking about moving their kids to another school or they've done that already, and that has a lot of upheaval in the kid having to make new friends, integrate into a new school system. So it has a lot of impact on a kid's life.
And you'll just be hoping that it doesn't get to that it doesn't have to be that way.
Absolutely. But unfortunately, I do hear of too many cases where this does happen.
OK, well, listen, we're really grateful, Kwaku, for you coming in tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you. And the Scottish Government says it is clear that there is no place for racism in schools, and one of the reasons for the increase could be improved reporting. It will publish, it says, new guidance for schools on responding to incidents, including guidance on recording and monitoring in the coming weeks. Thank you so much for joining us in tonight's News at 7. More to come in the programme, including the attempts to save one of Scotland's last print shops with its own historic printing press in Perthshire.
A dry spell of weather is set to continue through this week, but there is a change on the way, with rain set to arrive at the weekend. I'll have all the details on that in a full extended forecast later in the programme.
All that to come on tonight's News at 7. First, though, let's get the sport with Lewis.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening. Less than 24 hours after guiding Dundee to Premiership safety, the Dens Park club decided to sack manager Tony Docherty, saying results didn't meet the expected standards. Docherty led the club to 6th place and 10th place finishes in his 2 seasons with the Dark Blues. The decision has left former club captain Cammy Kerr shocked, and Kenny Crawford caught up with him earlier.
It's very quickly off the back of yesterday's win against St Johnstone, which again was a positive result in which they needed a high-pressured game. I obviously know it was the Player of the Year event last night that all the staff were at as well. So in terms of the timing to come out this quickly this morning after the season's just finished, it's a shock. It is a shock in terms of the timing.
From the way Tony Docherty was speaking after the game yesterday, obviously delighted about getting the win, delighted about securing the team's top flight status. He was talking about how great the club was, the fact there was 4,000 travelling fans there. This did not look like something he was expecting.
No, and I don't think he would have been expecting it. I think he, especially after yesterday, I did watch the post-match interviews. He'd fully expect to be in charge come the summer. I think he would have probably had, things like transfer targets, etc., in his mind for going forward. It's definitely not the season that he would have wanted, the club would have wanted, in terms of where they were last year. So it's been a disappointing season, and I know that there's been a bit of frustration from the fans, and at times probably rightly so. But they got over the line when they needed to. So massive. It all came a massive shock to him as well.
Thinking about contenders for the new manager, what kind of manager do you think Dundee need now at this stage?
The club holds a special place for me, and it's so many people. But the club has a special identity to me. It's all about the people of the city and understanding what Dundee people are all about. I think it needs to be somebody that's been connected to the football club, that knows the football club inside out.
Former Dundee captain Cammy Kerr talking to Kenny Crawford there. Now, Derek McInnes says he's joined Hearts to deliver trophies to the club's supporters and says he jumped at the chance to move from Kilmarnock as he feels the Tynecastle club has huge potential. McInnes' appointment was confirmed this afternoon. He didn't comment, though, on whether out-of-contract Scotland internationals Craig Gordon and Lawrence Shankland will stay with the club beyond the summer, but he did have this message for the Hearts fans.
We can have a brilliant thing going here. I think we've got a lot of the tools that's needed. I do believe we can win silverware, and that's got to be the objective right from the get-go, and have that sustained level of success, whether that's creating more and more value on the pitch, getting into Europe year in, year out, going the full way in cups, and eventually exceeding expectations in the league. As a bare minimum, we should be in the top half of the table, getting amongst the European spots. I think that's what Hearts fans expect.
Now, Scotland head coach Steve Clarke has named 7 uncapped players in his latest squad for friendlies against Iceland and Liechtenstein. But come those June fixtures, he may well be able to call upon 4 trophy winners plying their trade in Italian football. Yes, midfielder Lewis Ferguson and defender Josh Doig have already won the Coppa Italia and Serie B, respectively, with Scott McTominay and Billy Gilmore 1 game away from potentially securing the Scudetto, the top-tier title in Italian football. And Clarke was full of praise for their decisions to go and play abroad.
I think just the experience of going out in different culture, it's not just so much about the different football, the different styles and playing for different clubs, it's just the lifestyle experience. I think it's great that they're doing it, and it can only make them better players and better people.
Have you found an opportunity to get out to Italy at all, to watch many of the games out there?
No, the budget doesn't stretch that far. Unfortunately, you can watch everything on the telly or the laptop these days.
And you can also get plenty online as well over on the BBC Sports Scotland website, including details of another win for Scotland's rising tennis star, Jacob Fearnley. So good news there for him. And yes, Laura, that is a sport. I'm sure the manager, Steve Clarke, will find an excuse to get to Italy at some point. If the two boys could secure the league title at the weekend, that'd be amazing.
It would. Here's hoping. Thanks, Lewis.
Thanks, Laura.
Well, an 8-year-old boy with a muscle-wasting disease fulfilled his dream on Saturday by leading his footballing heroes out onto the pitch at Easter Road. Hibs superfan Sam Miller from Edinburgh has Duchenne muscular dystrophy and is battling to get access to a drug that could help keep him walking for longer before needing to use a wheelchair full-time. At the moment, NHS Lothian say there aren't the resources to fund the extra monitoring of it. One of the highlights of the day for Sam was meeting the players in the dressing room before the game, especially his idol, Dwight Gale. Now, the printing press revolutionised society. And that's why local campaigners are so keen to save a little piece of history tucked away on a street in Blairgowrie. It's one of the last remaining print shops in Scotland, as Elizabeth Quigley has been finding out.
Right, this is a Heidelberg Platen like I worked on many years ago.
Ron Stevens started work as a printer in Cooper Angus when he was just 15. He's now 79 and is keen to help bring this print shop in Blairgowrie back to life.
You're waking machinery up from the past, so everything was turned by hand first. Didn't come in and just switch the electric on and go bang. You know, everything was turned by hand to make sure everything was in sequence and there was no clashing of metal or anything could break. You know, so everything was done by hand first, turned over. Then we put the electricity on, and then we did them one by one under their own electric motors.
This B-listed print shop has been here since the end of the 19th century. Now there are plans for a new lease of life in the 21st century.
The hope is to get it up and running again, to offer it to the public to come and have a go, to offer it to schools to come and have a go, to learn about the history of printing and the building itself.
This method of working might be long gone, but the world of printing is still in our language today.
Yeah, so a lot of the terms that we still use today, so uppercase, lowercase, well, these are cases, these are uppercases, these are lowercases. Typefaces and fonts are literally these little letters that we have here, and even down to the point sizes, so that a point size in text is the size of these little metal cubes. So many of the terms that we use in digital media now have their roots in all this here.
This is one of the last remaining print shops in Scotland, and campaigners are keen to ensure it's preserved for future generations. Elizabeth Quigley, reporting Scotland, Blair Gowrie.
Looks like it might be faster than our newsroom printer was today. Right, let's get the weather now. Christopher is here with us. More scenes of sunshine.
Yes,
and blue sky.
A little bit of cloud around at times as well. That's really the weather for the week ahead, Laura. Thanks very much indeed. Lots of pictures once again coming to us from our weather watchers. A little bit of cloud there over the old course and some heart up the east coast, but sunshine and blue sky in Shetland, sand dunes. What a lovely picture from our weather watcher there, Jeannie. And for many, it was a mixture of sunshine and cloud, and more of the same to come over the next few days because high pressure is sticking with us. Let's take a look at what's coming up for the week ahead. High pressure has been with us for a while now, hasn't it? And it's holding on for the next few days. But actually, as we head through towards the weekend, we'll start to see a change with weather fronts and rain arriving off the Atlantic. But for the foreseeable, it is still predominantly dry. And that's how we start the day tomorrow morning. For many central and western areas, some morning sunshine. You'll notice, though, around the east coast, from the borders all the way up towards Aberdeen and in towards the Murray Firth there'll be a bit of cloud, some low cloud, patches of ha here and there. Generally fine, though, elsewhere, and we still have that moderate northeasterly wind affecting northern coasts and the Northern Isles. Through the course of Tuesday, that cloud that we start the day with in the east, that should clear, and then it's dry and sunny. But like today, there is some unstable air aloft in the southwest. That could trigger a few sharp showers, Ayrshire towards South Lanarkshire. Beyond tomorrow, looking at Wednesday now, we still have the influence of high pressure, so it is predominantly dry, but you'll notice just a cold front sneaking into frame there, because as we head through towards the afternoon, thickening cloud across the Northern Isles, 1 or 2 showers, that's the cold front. Elsewhere, though, dry and fine, lots of sunshine. We don't have the chance of those showers in the southwest either. Temperatures up to 22 degrees once again, always cooler and fresher around the coast and across the Isles. And then as we head through towards the end of the week, high pressure is just about holding on, keeping low pressure at bay, but that low pressure will win out. This is Thursday, though. It's largely dry once again. There will be some areas of cloud, and you'll notice a drop in temperature as well. 12 degrees in Aberdeen, Glasgow down to 18 rather than the 22 that we'll see tomorrow and Wednesday. Friday is similar. We've got that cloud coming in on the north wind, a cool feel under the cloud and in the breeze. Elsewhere, dry and sunny. And then the change, that low pressure I mentioned, there it is on the chart, sweeping weather fronts and rain in. Well needed rain, I might add, and that will signal a change for the end of the month, the last week of the month, much more unsettled. But before we get there, you can see for most of this week, dry with some sunshine, then rain on Saturday. That's the forecast.
It couldn't last forever.
It couldn't.
The gardens are ready for it.
Yes, I should imagine so.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you so much for your company tonight. Lucy White is here tomorrow night at 7, and there is more on all of our stories over on the BBC News Scotland website, remember. But from all of us here, have a lovely evening, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.